Hello and welcome to Might Be Awesome. My name is Sam Basher.
And I'm DJ Wooldridge, whether you like it or not.
You're going to have to deal with it. And guess what? You're going to have to deal with It Chapter 2 because it's the final chapter of the It franchise. Kind of feels like there should have been a third movie. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Now, there are reviews out right now that you can go find on Rotten Tomatoes and other publications. But guess what? We got to see it after the embargo went up. Thanks, everybody, for the invites. We appreciate it. Nuvi gave me a really cool little screening. That was fun. But let's go ahead and hop into our thoughts on it. Even though Rotten Tomatoes is out, you don't know what the boys think about it. So Rotten Tomatoes, you kind of jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah. You should have waited until all the reviews were in.
All the reviews.
All of these last two reviews.
There you go. So here's the quickie info for everyone who was curious and maybe forgot anything about this movie. Here we go. Directed by Andy Muschietti and written by Gary Dauberman. Starring Jessica Chastain, James McAvoy, Bill Hader, Isaiah Mustafa, Bill Skarsgard, Jay Ryan, Andy Bean, and James Ransome. Quickie synopsis: 27 years after the first encounter with the terrifying Pennywise, the Losers Club has grown up and moved away until the devastating phone call brings them all back together. This is hitting theaters tonight as of recording this, but mainly September 6th. Right now on Rotten Tomatoes, we actually could throw up our score. It is 71%, and the consensus reads, It Chapter 2 proves bigger, doesn't always mean scarier for horror sequels, but a fine cast and faithful approach to the source material keeps the follow-up afloat.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
There it is. All right.
That's how I feel. And there's no post-credit scene. Worth putting that in there. As far as I know, I watched as much as I could.
Yeah, so they didn't bring the lights up, but there definitely wasn't a post-credit scene.
So. There you go. So let's go ahead and hop into our overall thoughts.
How crappy would have that been? You sit through all the credits and then it's just like Pennywise like, actually, I'm still here.
Yeah,
come on, man.
There's nothing else to say. Are you going to do the one where they're in their 70s? I don't care. I don't care what it would be like for them. And they're probably going to die before that anyways. We didn't know if that changed. Anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. This is spoiler-free.
Yes.
Because you're going to watch this and you're going to go see the movie. But if you read the 15,000-page book, you might have some idea of what's going to happen in this film. So, DJ, before we get started, what did you think of the first installment? And did you ever see the TV movie?
I did not. I've seen bits of it, the Tim Curry bits, and he's
great.
So amazing.
The scariest thing you could do back then is bad teeth.
The first movie I thought was fine. I thought it had, a lot like this movie, I think the production design is really good. I think the casting is excellent. I think the cinematography looks really good. All the superficial things look really good, but it didn't really scare me. It was creepy, but it wasn't scary. Especially if, once you've seen it and you're going to go back, a lot of, the jump scares or whatever, it wouldn't have landed as much. And so I enjoyed it. But there are definitely movies I saw then and I've seen since then that I thought were scarier.
Well, for the first one, I really enjoyed it. I will say that I had maybe a beer or two in me because we went and got dinner beforehand. And I had guess what? Most scary movies get way scarier when you're not your brain's just throttled a little bit. And even watching it after that, I still enjoyed it. The scares were less scary, like you're saying, because a majority of them are jump scares. I still think every one of them is well crafted. And I like that Andy Muschietti and his production team do a good job of trying to capture things in a new light or in a way that you've never seen before. And the cinematography and the scene transitions are very creative. And I loved all the kids that they cast in the first movie were really good.
Really good actors.
The negative I had for the first one was that you're these people are best friends. Remember Mike? Everyone's best friend Mike, and I'm like, I guess they're all in proximity to each other, so I guess they're friends.
Yeah.
And I just never bought it. So in this movie, I'm I hope that they're able to kind of improve the relationship between these actors and making me believe that they're actually friends, and I think they did a good job with that in this one, where I'm oh no, I do buy that they have somewhat of rapport with one another. But let's go ahead and hop into It Chapter 2. I was able to see it thanks to our friends over at Nuvi. Watch Nuvi. You can go and check them out and follow them. They were very nice to put together a little screening. And so I watched it last night. My expectations were a little lowered because reviews were already out, and we had some friends a couple weeks ago who had seen it, and they had kind of they're either it was ranged between book readers and people who hadn't, and they both all kind of landed on the same opinion.
Same note.
I was I'll go in with the mediocre expectations, and overall, walking out of the theater, I had a good time.
Yeah.
I don't think this is not like a Green Room. That's a bad comparison. I think Conjuring is a good comparison.
Blockbuster horror movie.
Yeah, I think there are better blockbuster horror movies. I don't know that have come out this year, but just overall. Yeah. But that being said, I think this I found it to be an improvement over the first one, mainly because of the caliber of actor that's in this movie. And I was able to buy the relationships more. And I thought the humor, in blockbuster horror movies, you kind of have to have a little bit of humor because it is supposed to be for a more general audience. You have to make them feel a little bit okay throughout the viewing experience. And I found all the humor, mainly delivered by Bill Hader, made it really enjoyable.
I agree. I think Bill Hader was the standout. Everybody seems to be kind of on that same page as well. He of the people, he's the one like I really bought as a person. Like, it's great seeing Jessica Chastain. It's great seeing James McAvoy. For me, this one wasn't quite as engaging as the first one. I think primarily it's because the first one was so focused on just the kids and that one story, and for the majority of the story, those kids were together. Whereas this one splits them apart. They're adults. We flash back to the kids. This movie's the one that gets saddled with a lot of the exposition of what it is and how to take care of it. And there's just a lot of things it's trying to do at the same time, and so it kind of makes for a more disjointed, less cohesive movie.
There you go. Yeah. I think the performances across the board were good. Like you said, Bill Hader is like the star, and I totally agree with that. And it's funny that like your A-listers, your James McAvoy, Bill Hader, cool that Bill Hader's an A-list actor. Yeah. I'd say he is. And Jessica Chastain. Yeah. They do a great performance, but then everybody else does a great performance, but also clearly like the casting department deserves a lot of credit because they look exactly. Let me go ahead and pull up the actor. It's the adult version of Ben, and that actor's name is Jay Ryan. He looks, it's crazy how much it's all in the eyes, kind of. That's where you can kind of see like, oh, that's how you got the inspiration for him. Same for Eddie, played by, that's James Ransmore. I think they did a good job. Ransome, thank you. It's crazy how they've now gotten two different adult versions of that kid actor. One in Shazam, and I think Adam Brody. Yeah. It looks like him, but at the same time, so does this guy look like an adult version of Eddie specifically. I thought they did a really good job. And Alec Berg also looks like an adult version of Stanley. Shout out to Swamp Thing. Anybody watch that? Anyone check out our reviews of that? Please go watch our reviews. But I liked a lot of the mechanics that were established in this movie. Like that they kind of forgot about their hometown. Maybe they forgot that they even lived in this town. That was something they threw out, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I think about my childhood sometimes.
It never once occurred to you, like, "Hey, man, I never think about my childhood ever."
But I did like the implications of that, especially when it came to Beverly's character. That when it came to her messed up relationship with her dad, if she didn't really like learn from that because she didn't have the memories of that, it could cause like kind of a vicious cycle in their future relationships. And we are able to see something similar to that for like a second. I thought that was clever. I don't know if that's carried over from the books or not. Probably is. And you know what? I do have to say, out of all the A-list performances, Bill Skarsgard still gives a really good performance. I like what they do with Pennywise. There's maybe some of the scares for, like, you didn't find it as scary. I still enjoyed when the jump scares happen because I find this movie to be a blockbuster. It's viewed best in a theater with a lot of people around you, so you can kind of feed off that energy, which is what that whole movie's about. Whoa. And I think his performance and the physicality he brings to the role is top notch. And it's weird because I can't point to another thing that I like him in, mainly because I've only seen him in one other thing. He's not bad in it, but as far as like onto that series, he was just like sitting in a room quiet or walking around by himself like in the woods.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, and so like I can't he's good. Yeah. I could do that part. I can't do this. I can't do what he does in this movie, mainly because I can't do that eye thing.
They love that. They really put, it's like, oh, the eye thing. Let's do more of that.
Let's do a little CG where maybe they move a little bit more. And I'm like, ooh. Snap. And you know what? I dig it. I dig what they're able to do with that character. Also, seeing behind the scenes footage or photos, that a lot of that is practical. Like I always thought that they just kind of added a little bit more real estate up top, but no, that's all makeup.
That's his head.
That's his head. They actually have to make it smaller in other movies.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pain.
Yeah, it costs a lot of money. No, I like, and he gets a moment that I think improves on a moment with Pennywise in the first movie that didn't really track for me. There's a similar Pennywise moment that I think plays better. I will say there's not a lot of, and I think this worked better in the first movie, there's not a lot of nuance. It's like 1 to 11. There's no like middle ground. Like a lot of characters will show up like, hey, I'm this character and this is my deal, and then do their thing. And I think that might have worked better with kids because there's not a lot going on when you're a kid. Like if a kid has like a outsized personality, it's like all kids do. They're like screaming all the time. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, and so for this one, the adults are all like the most crazy successful versions of themselves, except for Isaiah Mustafa. Like he's the exposition machine in this movie, but everybody else is the best contractor or the best writer or the best whatever,
Hey,
which I think is from the book. So now
I think so too. Also, I think it's from like most Stephen King books there had to be a successful writer in there. It's like, yeah, of course, but they don't like his endings. I'm like, oh, that's fun. Okay, I get it. But I do have to. But hey, to that point, if you were chased by a killer clown when you were a kid, I would look at life as precious, and I would try to live it to the highest degree.
Yeah.
So maybe they're a little bit lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe a little.
You know what? Maybe
magic.
Pennywise helped them out.
You know what? Maybe be a little grateful next time. You get hunted down and eaten by a clown.
Yeah.
And you know what? You brought this up before we started recording. The book is framed in the 50s and the 80s.
Yes.
Yeah, our kids grew up in the 50s and they revisit Derry in the 80s.
In a surprising turn, 80s was when Stephen King wrote the book, and 50s when he was growing up.
Weird. So, and in this movie adaptation, our kids grow up in the 80s so that they can be adults
Now.
present day.
Yeah.
And, it's a fun idea. But that being said, there's a lot of plot points when it comes to the fears of the children, the cultural stigmas of present day, and even in the 80s that are kind of confusing. It's not
I
saying
don't know
that,
about you, but this to me this very much felt like an 80s movie. Mm-hmm. There's even a scene where they're in this little clubhouse that they make, and there's a Lost Boys poster, and this feels a lot like the Lost Boys. And so it's like, I feel like it should have been. You know, you go back to the first movie when Pennywise is like, "Oh, Georgie, you want to go to the circus? You want to whatever." It's like, yeah, nobody cared about the circus, and it's not the same as it was in the 50s.
Yeah.
And there's elements like this. It's like maybe you should have kept the original timeline.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree, because there's specifically one scene that involves like angry homophobic people and a gay couple, and you're like, 2019 is not perfect. It is not, and I can't say that everyone's going to be acting appropriappropriately and be accepting of all lifestyles, but if it was in the 80s, you'd be like, oh, 100%. Like, I fully buy that. Because it's also like Maine. I don't know where it lands on like the political spectrum, but you're just like, this seems kind of strange.
And also, like,
not saying, again, they're still bigots. I know that.
It also doesn't help because there's not a lot of nuance to that scene. It's like the gay couple is very much a gay couple, and the homophobes are very much homophobes, and there's not a lot of like, they don't feel like people. They feel like and I feel like a lot of this, like a lot of blockbusters, this is very much like a plot point delivery machine. Like it's not, which I think is a problem with horror movies, because a lot of it is you want to set atmosphere and you want to set tone. And I think the movie did a good job. The first movie did a better job of that than this one. I think there's a scene in the first trailer with Beverly. I think that does a good job with it. There's a few scenes with Pennywise that do a good job with it. But for the most part, this movie just trucks through. Hey, here's the ritual shoot. Hey, here's this thing. Hey, this is what you want to know. Hey, here's how this guy feels. Hey, and it's like, wow. And so it's hard for me as an audience member to like latch on to things and appreciate these people as people and the struggle they're going through.
I don't disagree. I think it's an overstuffed movie where a character from the first movie returns. I'll keep it vague because I also didn't know they were going to do this in the movie because I did not read the book. So we get a character from the first movie playing a big part in this one, and you're like, you don't need to be here. There's literally no reason for you to be in this movie whatsoever, besides like you create problems for our cast members, but Pennywise can do that anytime, any place, in any form that he wants to. So I don't really know why you're here, because it doesn't affect anyone emotionally more than anything else that Pennywise is doing. Yeah,
it is interesting that in the first movie you get a better sense, I feel like, of Pennywise's agenda and his ever-present threat, and like this, his actions feel more cohesive, whereas this, it's like I don't quite know what he's trying to do. You know what I mean? Like,
he's hungry.
Yeah, and we get a little bit. It's again, we don't want to get into spoilers, but like I think some of the trailers teased an idea of how he perceives his relationship with this group of kids that the movie does not deliver on in any like cohesive
Besides people
way.
just repeating it over and over again. That it means something to each other.
And stuff like that. Other characters, like people show up and things happen. Yeah, I think overall it's just a less cohesive movie-going experience.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy this franchise as a whole. I think it's a pretty solid adaptation of a Stephen King property that is beloved. Like I think there's a version that you could do that might be more cohesive. I think 3 movies in some way could make this
I've heard other people mention that. I feel like the middle movie would sag a lot though.
It might, but
I'm thinking
not...
miniseries. I'm thinking miniseries, like a 4-episode miniseries.
Mm-hmm. And then you can kind of show the adults and the kids at the same time.
Flashback, like because this movie gets burdened with trying to do both because everybody loves the kids, so we can't just get rid of them. But then the first movie didn't deal with the adults at all, so it's just so maybe like a 4-episode miniseries. I don't know.
No, I don't disagree. Yeah. I think that's a good point. I wish I had the budget of this movie, so that they could pull off some of like the larger than life scares. But to kind of like sum it up, I'd say my positives are the A+ performances from the cast members. I think even the kids that are in this movie and the kids who return from the first movie, I think they all give really good performances. And I think that for me, the scares worked enough. As much as jump scares can, but also I think the humor in this movie worked really well, and that's mainly on Bill Hader. It has 2 of my favorite moments in movies this year. They're not brilliant; they just are going to stick with me for a long time because I really enjoyed them. But what about you?
I agree with all that. Bill Hader, 100% positive. I like the cast overall, and just the visual aesthetic is really on point. I think we always like to do like our fun rating system. Is 27 years?
There you go.
You want to do 27?
Yeah, I'd give it a solid like 20 out of 27.
I would
like
give
a C middle.
That's right, because C isn't halfway through. I was going to give it like middle because that's a C, and for my mind, C's a middle. No, so be like, is that 20? 18?
Maybe a little lower.
18?
Yeah.
For a solid C.
For a solid
solid C.
You guys will call us out.
Yeah, you'll let us know.
Yeah, you'll let us know.
Those mathematicians in the comments will let us know.
Yeah, but again, this movie is pretty overstuffed, and I do want to say I think Isaiah Mustafa does a great job with exposition, but again, we don't learn anything more about him at all. Like, we know what Mike went through. Something happened with his parents, keeping it vague. And that's it for this movie.
And I will say, other problem with the kids that kind of bleeds over in this movie is a lot of like, the personalities kind of bleed together where it's hard for me to remember whose kid's bit is what. And even one character's tormentors show up in a scare sequence for another character that does not interact with them at all later in the movie. And it's like, what? Who's scared of what? I don't know. So
I'm full of so many fears. You can get me with just about anything Pennywise. But let us know what you thought of It Chapter 2 in the comments down below when you guys see it tonight or tomorrow or over the weekend or whatever. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share this around with your friends and family. Also, hit up Rotten Tomatoes and be like, you guys have an aggregated score, but without these 2 guys?
What?
Yeah, just send a link to this video. This will make them want to have our review written on their website. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.